Hello, Culture Matters podcast. We are back for a joy ride. Before I introduce you to our guest, here's a quote just for this episode. Meeting the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed.
Mm.
Our guest today, great friend of the Culture Matters podcast. If you don't know who they are, welcome to the show for the first time you're listening. I thought of this quote because a handful of years ago, the meet the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is a reaction, both are transformed. Good friend, the one and only Andrew Berman is here to talk about the recap of 2024. And we're going into a half decade long chemical reaction, explosion of value, both in the Culture Matters podcast universe and well outside of it. If you don't listen to our 30 Days of Thought with Paul Aceto, stop listening to this show altogether. You're clearly not a supporter. Andrew, thanks for coming. we, we just lost 25% of the. Thanks for coming back. I really want to dive into this recap. What did you learn? What did you accomplish? I should say what did we learn? What did we accomplish? What did we give up? Where were we aiming? How ready are we for 2025?
All right. So first off, that quote. I mean, I can't just leave that there and not give you my reaction on that. I mean, just because that's it was Christine Beckwith introduced me to her friend, the influencer. I just, it's so funny to hear because I remember just hearing that word and I'm just like, oh, so he's a douchebag. Because you describe an influencer, someone actually you can't describe, you can't label as something else. But little did I know actually that my life, my business, would be transformed, and I would have a backseat to seeing other people's business, and just lives transformed. And that was thanks to meeting you. Thank you to Christine for that connection and that initial dinner and everything that's happened since. So 2025, my year of 2025 was go. My word for 2025 was go.
What
So
you mean 2024? Or
oh
is
yeah,
that
sorry, 2024.
okay?
Yeah, yeah. So it was 2024. So it was cutting out noise and focusing on executing. And yeah, I I would definitely say that this year has been a great year of execution. I figured out a way to get out of my way in so many ways and figure it out the best way to execute, accept feedback from others, which as a business owner, I wasn't great at doing that. It was my way, and people just didn't question it. They just went with it in many cases. So I realized, I think this year I figured out better ways to work with others, better ways to just manage projects. But my word go, really, really actually had some significance, and just cut out noise. Like, listen, I just, not that I'm not, I'm never, I don't view myself as permanently sober, but I stopped drinking this year. Just stopped cannabis this year.
Ah,
Just because it does not help me execute. It helps me, delay executing. It helps me, just and while there's probably some creativity and social benefits of both that I've always enjoyed, but they did not help me with my goal of just focusing and executing this year. So yeah, this has been definitely a great year. I've hit the goals that I want, health perspective. I'm on par to hitting more um I'm pretty close to hitting my goals for reading and listening to audiobooks. So yeah, I'm pretty happy about 2024.
What word do you think describes 2024 on a macro level?
Um, that's a good question.
Because it felt like 2024, there's different parts of 2024. There's a lot of yeah, like 2024 has different shades to it.
From a macro perspective, I would say, I mean, it's an overall expansion of me as a person. Or my whole world, my all of the things that I've been giving effort to. Um, and I'd say there's not like and there are some projects that I've dropped this year. Some things actually that have just been sacrificed. So everything everything that I have focused on has grown and it has expanded. So um expansion, if we're gonna figure a way to put a label on it.
Mm. 2025. I believe that it starts in September. What do you think?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, there's no question about it. 2025. It's not a December kind of thing as things slow down for the holidays. Um, it's definitely a 2020. It's a 2024 third quarter. Start thinking about it, and in fourth quarter, you have to be you have to have the things together to be able to execute in 2025.
So I want your my belief is that people that are okay, if we have a dichotomy of like the people that were really winning in Q, whatever the year, Q1 and 2 and 3, they could easily convince themselves, and maybe they're listening to this, to put kind of pull their foot off the gas a bit, like rationalize, oh, the year's over. Like all the holidays are, a lot of holidays are happening that tur turn the focus to other important aspects of our lives, our whole lives. So like there's one tranche of people that have, having a great year, and maybe these rituals bring them away from being as proactive as they could in the end of the year. Then there's the other camp of people that might be listening that have not had a strong year they've rationalized and are more distracted than they think they are as the year ends in the next few weeks, month, and they're like, all right, New Year's, January, February, I got this for next year. And now they're doing nothing or next to nothing. Right. So there's those two camps. Those that have, and like maybe those two camps embody all people, because like even those that haven't been doing that well, shit. If you're not, it's like such a small, thin margin of the exceptional. But I don't know. I'm just the two camps, and maybe there's another camp of those that, yeah, obviously, like they're
Yeah,
not falling in these two camps, but
yeah.
not sure where the question. It's more of like, all right, here's a thought that happens in the end of the year. There are those that were doing well that are gonna self-sabotage, and those that were not doing that as well as they would have liked that will self-sabotage. What do you think?
Um, and it's I just there was also a third camp of people who are production based and want to hit those numbers for the end of the year. Where they're and in a lot of cases, our industry, a lot of originators are like that. They want to be, number one for their company, number one for their region. They want to have, the be the top producers. And it's sort in financial services. When I was a lot more focused on selling life insurance and financial services. You're judged based on a year. And so you want to know that that you hit, let's say 200 households, for the year. And so that means that sometimes the planning will suffer in, when you should be doing it in September, November, and December. And you are just running like a maniac. Like I remember actually in life insurance sales, on like New Year's Eve, trying to submit cases, being in there, doing appointments between, Christmas and New Year's, just to try to hit those numbers. So, which also meant that your planning suffered, and you probably had a suboptimal next year. I probably had a suboptimal next year. So yeah, so um, I don't remember where actually I was going, where I was commenting, because I in my mind, I lost track when I was thinking about actually that third group, of the third mindset. So
I think the third mindset are people that are just this is why there's a 1%, because because the 99, it's like I was reading chapter 12 in rules 12, yeah, chapter 12, rule 12 yesterday, finishing the last few pages of the 12 rules for life because I'm doing this series on each rule. And rule 12 was pet a cat when you encounter one in the street.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And and I'm gonna reread it because what the hell does that mean? And but I remember, and it's probably, alluding to what it means, but I remember something distinct about the last few pages where Peterson is talking about Superman and how the Superman as a comic in the 80s went down dramatically because over time of like existing as a character kept getting more and more powers that made him more and more powerful. And
Mm,
there was this idea of limitation versus unlimited, and how uninteresting the Superman story became. The more and more powerful he became, the less and less friction, the less and less, ultimately adversity or um. By the way, can you hear that horn?
no.
Drive me crazy. I'm recording this in a parking garage not even just because I'm trying to prove a point, but hopefully it proves some point in
Culture
for all
matters.
the yeah, for all the YouTubers listening to this. We're attempting to eat our own cooking, talking about, as we navigate down this 2024 recap and your word go and my word intensity for 2025. But just to go back to Superman, he was using this. talking about God in one context, how omnipresent, all everywhere at once, omniscient, knowing all, and omnipotent, and all in control. That's like, whoa, that's a whole nother level of, that's God. That's the eternal. But we're not that. We're fragile and infantile and limited. And with the limitation comes meaning. It's a becoming. There's and then use the example about Superman, that when they started taking his powers away, he had a lot of different powers, and giving him things that were obstacles, he became less unlimited and more limited. The more interesting the story became for other people.
Hmm.
That the limitations are a precondition to meaning, a precondition to becoming, to evolving. The limitations are necessary. What does that have to do with petting a cat when you encounter one in the street? Is something we could explore on another episode, because that's the rule number 12. I'm not yet ready for that. I'm going to be recording that months from now, so plenty of time to study. But um, that's why there's a 1%, because there can't be, everyone's not going to be at the same level. Not
Yeah.
everyone is going to give up as much. Not everyone is going to desire as much. Not everyone is going to be as, and that's the thing, right? It, nature versus nurture. How much of it is innate potential or like talent, and how much of it is skill that's been refined from character, having a forward aim and giving things up, having like, how much of it is what? We don't know these things. Would we rather take the super talented person that has like things just come naturally than the one that has the that's less, but their like, because the character, it takes character to show up and lose. And
Yeah.
like, wouldn't we agree, isn't it true that if somebody shows up and wins, or no, doesn't like, we all bet on them, they don't show up, they could have won. Everyone thought they would have won, but they didn't even show up.
Yeah. They're super talented, but the person actually who is not doesn't have that talent continues to show up, and they're they're going to eventually win because actually they keep
Well,
showing
and
up.
if they lose, let's think of it like a story. Yeah, here's where I was going with that. They show up and lose.
Mm-hmm.
And the other one, you build up the story and like everyone believes they're going to win. They don't show up. Everyone's going to be rooting for the one that showed up and lost. Or even, make it more simple, like the person everyone's rooting for shows up and they win because it's a battle. The one shows up and loses. The one that wins, if we saw how they trained or they prepared and it wasn't at the level of the other one, we're just going to hate them, like, as the audience.
Yeah.
We're not going to be as inspired by them.
Yeah, you can't identify with them.
There's something in us that is like so much bigger than us that identifies with that struggle
Yeah.
of the person that shows up and even loses, but did all this, that gave everything that they had.
Struggle porn. It's struggle porn. That's it. You want to hear actually these super uber successful people's stories and how they struggled to get there. They weren't always like, Gary V getting on and just being perfect on video, being able to have great word economy. They want to see actually, Wine Library episode 1, knowing actually that they weren't perfect. They want to know actually that these people, have learning disabilities. With your Damon John, and sharing actually, all the times, it didn't work out, but you just showed up, and you continuously showed up, and that's really, to quote the great uh, Josh Pitts, show
Yeah.
up, hustle, repeat every day. you know,
Shred, yeah.
yeah,
Shout out to
listen.
Josh. Anyone listening to the Culture Matters podcast.
Shout out to to
Yeah.
him actually, for he got me actually out of my shell initially, got me comfortable, doing camera, getting on camera, having
Wow.
any, like, I would never have been able to just have a conversation like this, and just openly talk about that, because Jay just message says, "Hey, let's talk about 2024." I'm like, I don't even know what that means. I'm not even sure how to prepare for that.
It's like
And
6 a.m. on a Saturday.
yep. But you know something, it was again, shout out to Josh Pitts for helping me become comfortable, just being out here and sharing it all.
What about the idea that, 2024, it's like the layup for the 25. I feel that everything I've done in 24 is really just a layup, or it's like a warm up of an exercise or something.
Layers, it's layers, it's foundations, building floor after floor after floor, and just keep building on it. And you're this year needs to be super strong. You need to have a solid year. You need to do everything you can to make sure this year is, because next year is going to be even stronger.
I'm out for blood.
Yeah.
I'm out for blood in 25.
What
I'm
does that
coming
mean?
for you. If you're listening to this and you are participating in some goofy ass program to help your company with anything relating to culture, you even think culture, and you don't we don't have an association. I'm coming for you. Or like, some of these, I just want to compete. I'm ready. Competition is so important for the customer. I've listened and listened and listened to these entitled, delusional, uneducated, incompetent ideologies around, you know, let's all just, there's no competition. That is a no.
What
In
about
fact, that competition is part of the free market. That's what gives consumers, we're all consumers. It's what gives consumers, us, the free people, the opportunity to choose. So, as a proud, uh, risk taking entrepreneur, I am proud to throw my hat in the ring, and compete for the benefit of the customer with those that are also in the execution of the ideas business, or even just the idea business, because not all are in the execution of ideas business like we are. They're just in the idea business. And hey, ideas move the world, ideas move organizations, ideas move people. So, and when I say, like, just think of any teacher, all the teachers, all of the whatever they decide to call themselves or are called, because there's different tranches that I've talked about in different podcasts. This, like, an advisor is different than a consultant, which is different than a coach, which is different than a mentor, different than a role model, different than a teacher. We provide all, we act out all of those contexts as a firm, and I do in different capacities. But I think competition is humbling, necessary, and beautiful. And when cultures don't compete with the marketplace, They end up eating themselves because to compete well, you have to cooperate with your internal staff. You have to cooperate with your customers, meaning learn from them, listen to them, hear what they're not even sharing, continue to improve for them, the customers, right? The purpose of the business is to create a customer, Drucker. And so,
Mm.
man, I have listened, I've watched, and I see we as a culture are regressing in so many ways. And I'm excited. Say 2024 was awakening. It was enlightening for me because it's like the culmination of all this listening. My ears are bleeding. 2025 is the year of shut up.
So, now when people say your only competition is yourself, do you think that's like, participation trophy bullshit?
When I hear that, I I can't say what I think. There's like what's God, I
Well,
gotta get this quote. Oh my, I wish I don't have it memorized or it's but I here say something even if it's meaningless just to so we're not
okay. So, well,
I can find this quote.
yeah, listen, without competition, without external competition, like I understand, yeah, you want to be better than you were last year than this year, and obviously, you're because you want to measure everything, and measuring, your growth, your even increments of growth, while it might not be significant, to see, you went from doing 65-pound weights to 70-pound weights, but as the course of time, actually things get stronger. But the so the internal competition is almost like a micro measurement, but like but without the external competition, we don't grow, we don't progress, we our products don't get better. We'd be still listening to MP3s on Microsoft Zunes, so like it is something that you
But listen, it's an oxymoronic statement because there's no self without others. But
yeah.
I do think the context that is often spoken, it's like what I'm about to say doesn't have to fully negate that idea. I think the undertone of that idea is like is oftentimes there's coming from a genuine idea of personal responsibility or the idea, but it is there's it's a contradict it's a knot. There's a knot in there because the self, the self is an interactive. It's an iterative process. It's there's like we're having a conversation. I'm I, I'm not. We're both as individuals benefiting from what the other is saying and not saying in body language. In like we're our we that's how we mature and evolve in how we relate to others relating to us, so that like the self is not an end in itself, it's a part of a general broader community culture of selves, and that's part of our humanity. So on a very more of a philosophical level it'd be like that's a oxymoronic statement. However, the spirit of that notion, I think the spirit is oftentimes. But anyway, actually, I could argue that and say, no. I mean, it's a really that on a unique individual level, you have to differentiate the spirit that's underneath whoever's like making that claim. Is it personal responsibility or is it self delusion? Here's the quote that I earlier was trying to find real quick. Um, every deep thinker is more afraid of being understood than being misunderstood. So I was that was just because earlier it's like, well, what do you think about what do you actually think about that? Um, just on that, there's absolute like in the absence of competition, things happen in a vacuum,
Yep.
and individuals and companies start to eat themselves.
So blue oceans are actually bad for you.
What do you mean?
So there's this concept of a blue ocean strategy where they say actually, like the ideal place is to be, in an environment where you don't have competition. The analogy is that sharks, like if you're in shark infested waters, you're a shark, and there's lots of other sharks, and the sharks are just eating themselves, and it's just turning the water bloody, and that's the red ocean. Whereas the you're a shark by yourself, in these big clear waters, you're able to eat the fish that you want to eat. You could swim wherever you want to swim. The analogy is like the circus, or the comparison to the business world is like the circus world. The Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey Circus, and the Big Top and all the other circus companies, like they just kind of like ate each other up, because they just went for bigger, more rings, more death-defying feats that had to be done, and they had to lower ticket prices and hire more people. When Cirque du Soleil said, "Fuck this, we're not even gonna bring elephants with us. We're gonna have just it's all gonna be these unbelievable athletes performing, and we're gonna charge more money, and we're gonna make it so it's a more higher end experience finding that blue ocean. So,
Hmm.
but that means that there's no competition, in that blue ocean. So your product maybe doesn't progress.
Well, I put it this way: it's in a free market. It, it, there, free market is a precondition for competition. Like at any moment, anyone can choose to get in the ring. That doesn't necessarily mean they have like people know about them, or they have the resources or the capabilities to be a viable competitor with another. So like it's more of a self-awareness exercise that it's like, okay. And then I'll say another thing on that actually is like, even if we don't recognize it, we below our awareness, because we get our brain, we're constantly taking in information, and we're reorienting ourselves based on what we see of others. Rene Girard like really outlined this work, mimesis, I think mimesis, or is it mimesis? I think. Um, that's gonna make me foolish if I said that wrong. But we're constantly reorienting ourselves based on this is the power of a group, for example, like a team. There's a healthy, there's a construct, and this is where the trust of the team is key, because and the leader's job, like the authority rather, that that is a behaviorism or a being of leading, is to sow the seeds of trust amongst that team, because there is a competitive nature to a team internally to each other. We push ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And if there isn't trust, it becomes political, where you have, a silo here, silo there, silo there, silo there. That's a consequence of the abdication of leadership. The Meaning the throwing away of the vulnerability, transparency, rationality, and empathy, compassion, that necessary admixture that creates trust or um develops the environment so trust, because trust is what trust is what kind of keeps the people from eating each other and cooperating, but still, because get rule number two in 12 rules is it rule number two, compare yourself to, or is it rule number four? That's gonna bother me too. Rule number one is stand up straight with your shoulders back. Rule two, no, rule two is treat yourself like someone you were responsible for helping. Rule three is make friends with people that want the best for you. Rule four is compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today.
Yep.
That's more of the idea of, instead of fixating on someone else's doings and doing, you can become the victim. It's like, well, what are you doing for yourself? It's more of redirecting to, hey, compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to someone else's today. Don't compare, but that doesn't mean that in another rule somewhere else in there, there's not something that's saying, well, I mean, really, that's go to rule three, make friends with people that want the best for you. If somebody wants, who's the type of person that could want the best for you? Somebody that is doing things that are, they have a name, they're sacrificing, they're moving forward, that they're not in a pit of self-pity and shame and guilt and, you know envy and all, like they're not living in all these bad, in this bad stew where they'd want to pull you into it to they're doing something, and then they're like, yeah, come on. Even if they're not saying it, they're just living that. So it's not it's, this is more of a self-awareness exercise, that the market is the market is the market. And yeah, how responsible are we, and what mechanisms of accountability exist? There are competitors that are fighting for a limited market share, that do exist. How hard are we working? What are we giving up? How cooperative are we? Are we really working as a team to win? Or are we competing against ourselves? I don't know. We'll have to come back in 2025 and continue this conversation. Andrew, in the closing thoughts, what do you got?
So, um, competition. I think it is definitely something that drives us. Competition, both externally and internally, are good things. Competition externally allows us to progress. Competition internally allows us to make sure we're uh, less of an asshole this year than we were last year. Um, and yeah, that's really that's that's my takeaway from this. And at the end of the day, right now, if you're listening to this in November, and you haven't started planning, you need to do that. Like, this is you know you know the reality is that there's so many business plans that are done in January, and most of those business plans that are done in January are done just like cursory business plans that people do just because they feel like they're supposed to do a business plan for the year, and don't get followed up and tracked. That if you really care about it, then guess what? If you're planning for January 2025 in January, fuck it, just work hard
Yeah,
and start planning for 2026.
if you're doing a plan in January, then you didn't work before that. You weren't even working.
Well, listen, so that third group, that third
Don't even
group
do the plan. Just
of
go to work.
So listen, in January, when I was focused on production and just getting as many lives handled, that's what we did. We worked our ass off until December 31st, and then January we slowed down for a bit so we could start planning for that year. But yeah, like it's that's what kept me, as I was still actually a council level, high producer, but there was yeah, I was not in the top 10% of the company, and I didn't understand how to get into the top 10% of the company, because that top 10% of the company, they are planning in September, for the following year. They are also at the office in
Wow.
January, or in December, hustling when I was hustling, trying to get actually, an additional case or two in. So yeah, so it's possible to be both.
Please leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast, and we will see you next time.